All right. Thank you for tuning into the Jeremiah Gunn Show. Thank you. This is the Jeremiah Gunn Show on CSN. This is CSN, the Common Sense Network, part of the ISI Network. Part of the ISI Network, it's CSN, the CSN, where you learn the truth. This is the Jeremiah Gunn Show. Trigger warning, you're at a gun show. You are at a gun show. And you don't want to see these howitzers. That's why you won't see me in the image. I'm not going to take up 3/4 of the image and point to the little thing that I'm trying to call attention to. Anyway, if you saw these howitzers, you'd need a box of Kleenex to stop crying. This is rough. If you see me coming, you better step aside. A lot of men didn't. A lot of men died. I've got one fist of iron and the other of steel. If the right don't get you, the left one will. It'll always be the left that gets you. Did you know that the word left in Latin is sinister? And if you look at Michelangelo's David, he's facing the left. He's facing the left because the right is covered by God. By God. The right is covered by God. So the left is where evil comes from. The good book says that all over the place. Wisdom literature. A man's evil comes from the left. Goodness is on the right. It's not like we've been left with no clues, like Jumanji or something. Anyway, this is Jeremiah Gunn Show dedicated to Charlie Kirk on the CSN ISI network. We are broadcasting behind enemy lines in the war of 1776, 1864, and 1984. It's a perfect storm. This is a war on men. You know, we're talking about loneliness, Ted. That's the bottom line. Loneliness, Ted. TED is an acronym, you know. TED Talks. TED Talks. They were pretty popular for a while. I don't know if they're a thing anymore. But it stood for technology, engineering, and design. And then they branched out to have other sort of preachers with a headset prancing around the stage talking about, I heard one talking about sex and marriage and so forth. You know, so there's a lot. But not bad, not a bad idea, but it's just part of this. Loneliness Ted. This is Loneliness Ted Part Free. You know, Charlie Kirk, his family and all of us were made lonely by a loner who was a self-centered narcissist who decided, kind of like George Carlin talked about class clowns. They'd be saying, I'm not enjoying this education. I'll deprive others of it. You know, he decided to steal. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. We are told, we are warned. And that's what he did. He created loneliness because of, I guess, his loneliness. The loner didn't fit in. So we're broadcasting behind enemy lines to the resistance, talking to you men, because this is a war on men. Now, I want a quick disclaimer. I believe that God's greatest creations are dogs, some women, some men, and then natural wonders, great things. Nature can be beautiful, it can be devastating, just like people. It can be life-giving, it can be destructive. It's like they talk about a river. A river, there's almost nothing more beautiful than a river as it flows and creates life all around, within, without, on the sides, underneath, on top. And it's a provider. And yet, if it overflows the banks, if it takes over and blows past the constraints, it destroys everything. You've all seen pictures of floods. I've been seeing them since the mid-1900s. And why we never channeled that water, well, they have too much, to where we don't have enough, is really puzzling. With all of the work we did with our tax dollars under FDR, WPA, NRA, blah, 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 CCCP. Anyway, so this is a war on men, about 100 years old, maybe a little more. And men are lonely. Men are lonely. There's a loneliness epidemic. This is part free of loneliness, Ted. That's the bottom line. Anyway, women are lonely because they've destroyed men. They've destroyed the women. They've destroyed they joined the wrong side. They don't know their enemy. They picked the side that destroys civilizations. The side without natural affection, as the wisdom literature puts it. Reminder, I'm talking to everybody because I'm not preaching, I'm not Bible thumping, because this country is a unique dream in all the world. The USA, we have dual citizenship. C.S. Lewis, the brilliant C.S. Lewis, said we are like amphibians, part fish and part something else, human. We're part spiritual and we're part physical. And we've let the wrong side take over and dictate to us. We're dual citizens of the USA first, America first, and the kingdom of God, and by extension the world. Everyone is my brother and sister because we all have the same creator and we're endowed by that creator with inalienable rights, etc., etc. Oh, you know the thing. So we belong to that. Loneliness is, well, you know what? I'd like to start with a song. I'm having technical difficulties, musically speaking, here with my system, and I haven't fixed it yet, and I want to keep talking. So I'll just read the lines from this great song by a group called America. How about that? Imagine that. This is for all the lonely people, thinking that life has passed them by. Don't give up until you drink from the silver cup and ride that highway in the sky. This song is so beautiful, such a folk song if you can just hear the instrumental. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but I was riding with my kids one day, my wife and I, and driving them to school, high school, junior high, and I said, why do you love our generation's music so much? And they said, because ours sucks. Well, I have to say the 60s and 70s, I'm not a big fan of the 50s, but 60s, 70s, even some of the 80s, it was a renaissance. It was a golden age. Anyway, this is for all the lonely people thinking that life has passed them by. Don't give up until you drink from the silver cup and ride that highway in the sky. This is for all the single people thinking that love has left them dry. Don't give up until you drink from the silver cup. You never know until you try. Well, I'm on my way. Yes, I'm back to stay. I'm on my way back home. This is for all the lonely people thinking that life has passed them by. Don't give up until you drink from the silver cup. Never take you down, never give you up. That's for sure. We won't. Never know until you try. So loneliness is not, we talked last time about John Adams was writing in the diary. He was about to, with his handful of farmers and merchants and shipbuilders and fishermen, he was about to attack, and lawyers, he was about to attack the world's greatest military. And if you think that Iran versus United States and Israel isn't fair or something, this is a whole nother level. The greatest military in the history of the world, and a little group of ragtag people who just had a dream, had an idea. They had a dream that one day they would let their posterity have freedom, something that they came here for asylum. Anyway. And he was writing in his diary, John Adams, he's kind of thinking like, what have we done? What have we done? And he felt lonely. He had to go argue every day with his Continental Congress about whether we should do this or not, and how do we do it, and what do we do if, and all that. But anyway, he wrote in his diary one night, just kind of crying out, is anybody there? Is anybody here? Does anybody care? Does anybody see what I see? They built this into a great movie, a great musical. If you get a chance to see 1776, it's a little corny, but 7 years in the making, and it was a labor of love. But anyway, does anybody see what I see? That's what loneliness comes from. There's no question, facts are stubborn things, said John Adams. There's no question there is a loneliness epidemic. I read Forbes or Fortune did a full issue on a thing called the fraying of America. Why do we feel so bad when we have it so good? No one's ever had the quality of life we have today. Nobody. Never, ever. No king, no Solomon the wise, nobody. Why do we feel so bad if we have so good? Why are we having a loneliness epidemic? Because it's intentional. They've been trying to destroy us. So loneliness is an absence of belonging. It's an isolation. If you don't know that you belong to us, and whenever I say us, it's United States, U.S. Whenever you hear me say U.S., understand that it's us. Okay. So how do they do it? They get us to not know who we are and not know whose we are. We belong to the United States, e pluribus unum, out of many, one family. One family. We can be a family of man, but we have to be a citizen of the United States, a family of the United States, because it is exceptional, despite the left, like Obama, saying that it isn't. Anyway, if you don't know whose you are and who you are, you don't belong. There was a book called The Man Without a Country. I didn't have a country. It's a lonely feeling. It's a lonely feeling. Okay. People leave their country to come here so they can be. I just met a Vietnamese neighbor the other day. Been here 6 years, been a citizen 6 years. Just started the process as soon as he got here. That's all he wanted. That's all he ever wanted was to be a citizen. And what a wonderful man. What a great guy. You got to go talk to the real people. Don't watch the news. Don't get a degree if it's going to be caca de la vaca, which is one of the things we'll cover is glossary here. We used to say bullcrap, caca del toro, but we have to say now caca de la vaca, cow crap, because women, one, they need to have their moment in the sun, right? They've been trying to get it. So now we can, and most BS doesn't come from bulls anymore. It comes from cows. And bulls that think they're cows. So let's understand that. So, so take Francis Scott Key for a minute. Here he was a Baltimore lawyer, and there's a tribute to the whole Star Spangled Banner, as you've never heard it before or something. Anyway, it tells the whole story of this guy. He was a Baltimore lawyer who went on board this English ship with the prisoners, and he let some of the prisoners go. And he watched as they bombarded. They probably got a big kick out of having him on board, bombarding the Fort McHenry. I took my family to the Smithsonian in Washington, and we saw the actual flag. They have the gigantic. It's huge, and it's being worked on by at the time, and the level of air conditioning, humidification, no humidification. I mean, and the chemicals they have to use, working on this giant scaffold, working thread by thread to keep that thing. It's beautiful, reverence for that thing. But he spent a lonely, lonely night wondering when the sun came up. Here I substitute myself as a hostage for them. I allowed them to become free by taking their place and trying to negotiate peace. But as I'm watching this bombarding, I got to see if when the sun comes up, if is it still there? Is our flag still there? Because if it ain't, we don't have a country. He's the man without a country. They just stole. That was called the second revolution, because in 1812, England attacked us again and tried to take over. They tried to take it back. They were not too happy with the revolution. Canadian troops came and burned the White House. That's why it's called the White House, because they burned it. They burned it, and it turned black from the flames, so they painted it white to cover it. It was called the Executive Mansion until then. Dolly Madison rescued a bunch of artifacts from there on her way out of James Madison's wife, First Lady. Wonderful. Founding mother. There's founding mothers, too. But interesting, it was Canadians that burned the White House. A Canadian friend of mine, tongue-in-cheek, kind of reminded me of that. Well, what are you doing here, pal? I mean, I don't know, whatever. He can't figure out what country he belongs to. So anyway, just as we are members of a corporation, maybe at work, and we can, when we can feel like a faceless, nameless number. And let's, let's go back to the definition of loneliness again, just as a recap. It's not the absence of people. New York, L.A., Chicago, Boston, these are the Minnesota, Mogadishu. These are the loneliest places on earth. The density is inversely proportional to the loneliness because you don't feel like you belong. And because the rulers don't love you as much as they love anybody else that they think can do a favor for them, can help them out and move their agenda forward. So just as we are members of a corporation and we can feel like a faceless, nameless number without a voice, remember that? They took our voice. Oh, they just want to have a voice. That's why they're burning down their own city, their own community, and killing their own race who are security guards or whatever, trying to stop them. And just like that, it's same with the church. Church and state, take your pick. Corporation, a church is called a corporation. Family, this is kind of the foundation. We're on a war. This war has three fronts: family, faith, and founders. The state, the country, your country, family, faith, and country. I was trying to get 3 F's, but your family, your God, and your country. You got to get those in the right order. You might have to fight against your family. Just like Kimmy Kimmel's wife can't even go home for Thanksgiving. So she writes scripts to him and runs to her therapist on how much she hates Trump because she hates Trump. She hates her family. And he has to take part in that psychosis because he's not a man. So you got, in the Civil War, you had to decide if you were going to shoot against your own brother. You can't, Robert E. Lee decided his own state. He took his state over his family, his faith, and his country. You can't get it out of order. It starts with God, and then your country, and then your family. I mean, hopefully your family is on board with your country, but they're not anymore. Not anymore. Not then. Not now. So if you can't say, well, I'll take up arms against my country if my family does. This is why you had fathers and sons. They called it the war, brother against brother. That's how they called that war, because some people had to say, hey, I come from a big family. I got some that are just absolutely in left field. Left field. They're crazy. Like Trump said in the State of the Union, you people are crazy. You're crazy. He who stands for nothing will fall for anything. But you don't have a right to sell out my country. You don't have a right to sell us down the river like we're slaves. I'm not. You might be. I'm not. So anyway, you could be in a church, you could be in a corporation, but you're under attack. Didn't Marxist BLM attack the family? Didn't they attack the family? Didn't we find out later? Did anybody spend 15 seconds to find out what the charter of BLM was before corporations gave them a bunch of money? Some people joked later that it stood for blacks living in mansions because the two heads of it, the lesbian Marxists who were attacking the family with their charter, their organization, they did real nice. They got a nice crib, a nice hookup, nice swag, nice income. Because of this transaction that Shelby Steele brilliantly describes. It's a transaction of we'll assuage your guilt for a fee. That's why the NFL paints end racism in the end zone when they made all of these races multimillionaires. Figure that out. It's pandering. They call the Democrats the Black Pander Party. So where were we? BLM. So awfuls, even wonderful, sweet awfuls in my own family. They're useful idiots. They don't know they're an awful. They don't even know they're an awful. It's like that movie, The Sixth Sense. I ruined that for my family. I can't believe it. Spoiler alert. I just blurted it out, and they won't forgive me. But anyway, I see dead people. They don't know they're dead. When Gore was running against Bush, people made a meme that said, I see dumb people walking around. They don't know they're dumb. So you can be a useful idiot. Awful. Awful, again, stands for affluent, white, female, urbane, leftist. Maybe they're probably urbane because they were educated in a university. So you could change urbane to university because maybe it was out in the flyover country, but still, they were warped. They were polluted. They were inverted. One of them said to me, well, I think BLM means different things. I mean, I feel like they think BLM means something else. Well, don't you think that the charter should inform us on what they mean? Why do we have to attribute something to them that isn't what they mean and say, I think that's what they mean? Why do we do that? Because we have to think. The left has to think for the left has to think for the poor colored people. They have to infantilize them, just like the brown people. They know they can't learn English. They can't do well in school. We'll take care of them. Let's keep them on the plantation. We'll either patronize them or we'll ignore them. So businesses started, I mean, that's racism. If you want a definition of racism, that's it. Malcolm X said that the worst enemy of the Negro, I think he said Negro in those days, the worst enemy of the Negro is this white leftist who thinks, I think they use the word liberal, they used to be liberal, who thinks that they're doing us a favor and they're walking around foaming at the mouth trying to help us. Frederick Douglass, 1860s, said, stop helping us. That's what we want. We want to be left alone. Stop taking from us to do more to us, as Margaret Thatcher brilliantly put it. So businesses started studying success and failure, and what to do about it. They started these business movements and things like that, where they, the in search of excellence and all this stuff. Anyway, a CEO said to me, he said, I want you to be happy, because we were talking about who I would report to, and he wanted me involved in the process when we were doing a reorganization number 106.5. It's like a movement, it's not really necessary, but it makes you feel like something's happening. So they do it. They get excited in the movement. And they justify their position of the underlings who study management or consultants. They say a consultant is somebody who borrows your watch and then tells you what time it is. But anyway, it was very nice. The CEO met with me personally and said, who do you want to report to in this reorg? He said, I want you to be happy. I want you to be productive, but I want you to be happy. Because he knows that happy people are productive people. And businesses found out, they studied this, that anything over 100 people was a bureaucracy, a soul-stifling bureaucracy. Remember, a bureaucracy, a bureaucracy, what does it do? It's a crazy thing about memory. Bureaucracy, reveres the status quo long after the quo has lost its status. So bureaucracies stifle you. That's what George Orwell worked in when he wrote 1984, An Animal Farm. They're soul crushing. And so they found out that anything over 100 people was a bureaucracy, and it became redundant and duplication of effort, inefficiency. And people just weren't happy. They weren't fulfilled. So they said, break your corporation into groups of 100. One of them does manufacturing, maybe purchasing. One of them does finance. One of them does one kind of engineering. One does another kind. And let them rip. Don't keep this massive thing. What do they say? A bureaucracy is a massive mechanism or run by pygmies. So churches did the same thing. They said, hey, we want to run like a business. We want to be efficient. We want to be profitable. We want to grow. Grow, you die. Learn the lesson of the dinosaur, be great or be extinct. So my mega church did the same thing. I think the Baptist organization, hired a consultant, just like the corporations did. Corporation means body. So you have a body of believers in a church, you have a body of people. We get the word corpse from corporation. Corpus Christi, Texas. Can you believe that's still on the map? We have the ACLU hasn't gotten rid of that yet, huh? Corpus Christi, the body of Christ, literally in Spanish, in Latin. Cuerpo de Cristo del Señor, that would be Spanish. So Corpus Christi is a Latin phrase. Just like you go to California, every freaking every city is named after something. But, here's a little trivia. You're going to get stuff that's not trivia, but it's history. You know what the real name of Los Angeles is? La Ciudad de Nuestra Señora, la Reina de Los Ángeles de Porciúncula. La Ciudad de Nuestra Señora, la Reina de Los Ángeles de Porciúncula. So it's the city of Our Lady, the Queen of the Angels of Porciúncula was a river in Spain. Yeah, Sacramento means something to do with, Sacramento River, which was the Blessed Sacrament, San Bernardino, St. Bernard, San Francisco, St. Francis. And we didn't have to get rid of all these names. We just had to get rid of any notion of God or the Ten Commandments or anything else. So churches started looking at this and said anything over 100 people is a bureaucracy, just like business. Huzzah. And, so they said, break them up. Take your junior assistant junior pastors and have them go off and what they call church plant. Break it up so that people can be together, can be a family, not just a number. Not looking every Sunday at the side of someone's face or the back of their head that you'll never really talk to or connect with. And so they started to have these things. They started to emphasize growth groups, cells, as if, you're a body and those are the cells and little groups. And at about the same time, mega corporations started calling their people, who were really only numbers, especially in the huge organizations, but they started calling them associates, as if they're like partners in a law firm or something, as if giving them a name change changes their real life status and their day-to-day experience. About the same time, HR changed personnel to human resource. You're a human resource. You're not a piece of equipment, machinery, utilities, paper, copier, stapler, staple. You're a human resource. So I guess that was supposed to make people feel more human, calling them, changing from personhood, personnel, to human resources. And mega churches started to emphasize home fellowship, small groups. Just as a side note, Gutfeld was on the other night. He said that young dudes are turning to God. 42%, I think Gallup found that 42% of men 18 to 29, this shot way up. It was a hockey stick chart they showed. 42% of men 18 to 29 turned to God. Turning point. I think Charlie probably had a lot to do with that. He was Pied Piper to a lost generation of bullied men and women. Bullied by the government, education, media, attainment complex. The ones who were on the throne organizing no kings rallies. So churches did this, but then the churches kind of stratified. They kind of said, well, you can't be in that home fellowship group because they already at 10 and we limit it to 10 so that we'll make sure that people have belonging. Not 12, not 11, not even if you knew the guy your whole life and wanted to be in with their family. It doesn't matter. And they split you up. You pull up in the car and you split up into different rooms. Young married, old married, never married, formerly married, won't be married. Widows, widowers, widowees, widowos, jazz, rock, easy listening, old-timey gospel. Just go to your separate room as long as you come here and fill the seats. So anyway, I'm not bashing what we call churchianity in our circles, but, it's worth looking at. It's worth looking at. It's worth thinking about. You know, one of the greatest movies ever made was called Idiocracy. What they ought to do is go into the high schools, junior highs, and get rid of this stuff that was created by Howard Zinn or whatever, BLM or CRT or whatever the latest fad du jour of the left, and put in, just show Idiocracy. That's it. Nobody explained it any better than that, of what's going on. That was based on a book. That movie was based on a book called The Marching Morons. It's by the guy who created King of the Hill. And just magnificent. Well, King of the Hill did a magnificent show called Church Shopping. You can find it on YouTube or whatever. And they, bottom line, at the end of it, the main patriarch, I don't even know his name, but he's got a crew cut and glasses and a T-shirt. Anyway, he went from this untraditional traditional church. It was traditional church. He was going his whole life with his family. And then they brought in a liberal leftist pastor woman from Wisconsin. He was from Wisconsin, of course, or Minnesota. And she, upended the whole thing. And so his traditional church, so he started church hopping. He went to this super mega church. And it was like a Mall of America, this massive mall where you can get on a tram and drive past the bookstore, the candy store, the coffee shop, the movie theater, the music room, whatever. And they had a massive staff that was always calling him, asking him, "Are you fully satisfied? Partly satisfied? What do you think of our gym? What did you think of our soccer field? What do you think of our landscaping? How did you like the service?" So he kind of, at the end of the day, he's kind of like, he sums it up. He says, my old church didn't know I even existed, and this new one, they won't leave me alone. So, sometimes community efforts destroy community. I got a family member. She's a very sweet woman, mother, and daughter, all this stuff. Anyway, she jokes about my community as the local supermarket. It's a very diverse group of people. I mean, very diverse. And I'm like really tight friends with all of the associates. And I don't know if they call them associates in that corporation, but they're my associates. I associate with them. One of the greatest books Alexis Tocqueville wrote on democracy in America, I think a couple of volumes. And he came here and he said, how does this thing work in the 1800s, 1830s? What makes America go? And it supposedly is attributed to him that he said America is good, is great because she's good, godly. And if she ever stops being good, she'll stop being great. And he wrote a lot about associations, clubs, guilds, Dennis Prager talks about what great experiences he had with Kiwanis. I talk about the YMCA, and especially with the Indian guides, my kids, or, these associations, these voluntary associations where you get together, pull together, help each other out. It's a beautiful thing. So she kind of jokes about it, but I think she means well, that, that's neat that I have a community. But, I love people. I love finding out about them, what they're into, what they're struggling from. How's it going for you? We're all in this together. That's what MLK said. So there's this guy named Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a couple of books, The Anxious Generation, The Happiness Hypothesis. Of course, I read them both. And I think he wrote one called The Coddling of the American Mind. I think he was involved in that. So it's the idea of you infantilize people. You don't let them grow up. They do two things to you, the left. They take children, and I heard this, I think it was John MacArthur. I don't remember if it was him, but he was talking about if you make, it's sort of like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but maybe that's a metaphor, maybe that's a parable, maybe it's really true. Doesn't matter. He said, when you take children and unlike Dennis Prager said, children should live in the Garden of Eden as long as possible. You don't have to dump on them with adult themes. especially, I'd recommend not mutilating them and giving them chemical castration that you don't even know what does any more than you knew what the vaccine for COVID does. So, when you take a child and you tell them something, my brother was teaching a young grade, second grade, third grade. He said something that wound up being a double entente. What that means is like a joke, like, Johnny Carson made famous, where it sounds like it means something, but it means something else funny, like sticking on the end of something. That's what she said. Or hello, it just becomes a double entente. That's not what I meant, but I get you. So anyway, he was just talking to them, just lecturing, second grader, I think, second, third, fourth grade, young. And he said something and they all started laughing. And he couldn't even figure out what they were laughing at. He just said, I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for you. And they could say, sorry for us, you old fart, Yeah, because you don't have a childhood. You don't have if you introduce adult themes, why do they put that on Netflix or whatever? Adult themes, flashing lights, smoking. Why do they do that? Because they don't want to ruin the children. Isn't that what Socrates was executed for? Warping the youth, perverting the youth. He said, "What you teach to children, you do to society." So anyway, so here's what they're doing. They're trying to force them to grow up. They're stripping their childhood by making them adults. If they know the same thing an adult knows, they're not a child anymore. Isn't it that simple? It's transactional. So, and here you're teaching them to mutilate their bodies or take drugs or think completely differently. Don't tell your parents and so they're trying to protect them. They want you on your parents' health care because they know you won't be able to buy your own until you're 26, but they want to lower the age of consent. What are they trying to make 15-year-olds vote? You can't be president until you're 35. You shouldn't be able to vote for president until you're 35. There's a reason for these things. So they're driving the age of consent lower, and then they're trying to protect you longer. Some 18-year-old kills, a 19-year-old kills a bunch of people mercilessly, and it's a child. It's a child. It's a child. He'll be tried as a child. It's sick. It's sick. Anyway, so he wrote this book, The Anxious Generation. Remember our definition of loneliness. It's not the absence of people. It's the feeling that nobody gets you, that you don't belong. That you don't belong. It's always loners and outsiders that do these horrible things. We've taken our eye off of them. We've let them out of the collective and just fend for yourself. Take a dump up in front of someone else's business. Shoot up under a blue tarp. I'm not responsible for you. And then they come around, if you try to cut any of their funding, the left, the Democrats, communists, government, education, media attainment complex, they go, oh, aren't you your brother's keeper? Now all of a sudden they're going to pour some religion into it. They're going to do Christian charity and good works with your money on their terms. They'll define the word compassion. Didn't Mom Dummy, the warmth of collectivism? Think about this for irony. Didn't he let 16, 13 people freeze to death this last winter? No other mayor did that. Just the one that says the warmth of collectivism. Smile like a snake. Anyway, so in the anxious generation, if you look it up, it says, what's the quote from the anxious generation? I love the way questions are formed in there. I don't know if that came from China or whatever. What is the quote from the anxious generation? Okay, I guess I know what they mean. Well, they came back with this. People don't get depressed when they face threats collectively. They get depressed when they feel isolated, lonely, or useless. Can you think of any? That's not a law firm, isolated, lonely, or useless. It's not an ACLU law firm. It's what they did. So this guy, Jonathan Haidt, speaking of loneliness, voluntary loneliness or whatever, he decided in high school, since he was so brilliant, that there is no God. There's no God. It's a joke. There's no God. Then, when he gets older, he goes and studies, you know, psychology and philosophy and spirituality, but he goes to the East, like the Beatles, like these religions that say that the world rides on the back of a turtle. And a blue god named Hare Krishna came from somewhere and had a bunch of sex with a bunch of people, kind of much whatever he wanted. And those are the places where we'll find it, you know? So they went from the frying pan to the fire. We have all the answers right here. We have all the answers right here. But why do they tear it down? Ask yourself why they want to tear this down. Jesse Jackass, he was a member of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that was founded by Martin Luther King and other folks. I don't know, maybe Andrew Young was involved. James Baldwin, I don't know. But anyway, Jesse Jackass, Reverend, Christian Reverend, right? MLK was a Marxist, and then he watered it down a little bit and said he's a socialist. Just like, Mom Dummy, Bernie, Pocahontas. Listen to someone who knows, Ayn Rand. She said there's no difference. One is death by suicide, one's death by murder, homicide. They'll both get you. So anyway, he goes to Berkeley, and he jumps in, and he's yelling, hey, hey, ho, ho, Western Civis gotta go. Anybody ever ask him why? Anybody ask him why? Just like when Obama, the Marxist, came and said, we are just 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. And of course the media said, what? What? Where do you get the idea, and what do you want to transform it to? I want to give you hope and change. Well, who said we have no hope? What kind of change? You think we're just supposed to, even if you're in a store, bodega, and they say, here's your change, you're kind of interested in what it is, aren't you? Let alone the greatest civilization in the history of womankind, the last best hope of mankind on earth, womankind on earth. Don't you think so? But the Marxists have to destroy everything. A thief comes, the wisdom literature says a thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, just like Charlie Kirk's killer and all his enablers. There was a study that showed that teachers and professors led the charge to celebrate Charlie Kirk's murder. They're the enablers of these lonely losers, these self-centered narcissists, by coddling their mind. And so we're going to talk about, in the anxious generation, he talked about how devastating social media was to women in particular, both men and women, but not far and away more, by far more to women, because he found out boys and girls both desire agency and communion, but girls tend to favor communion and boys tend to lean more into agency. That's why they play video games and, and do UFC fighting or martial arts or whatever. And competitive smash mouth sports and things like that. But they go into the service more. The agency is like independence, like our revolution, action leadership, like our Civil War, servanthood, sacrifice, like wanting to serve, wanting to give of yourself. That's why that's what men want. They want a purpose. They want agency. Women were destroyed by the social media. Churchill. How so? They go online and they see their friends, their mean girls, showing a picture of them, unflattering, at a party or in a bathing suit or something, and or their makeup or their hair. My daughter was like in 4th grade and she came home very sad. And the mean girls said, you probably don't even know what a mall is because of the dress that she was very proud of that she walked out of the house that day on the first day of school. They just trashed her. I didn't sign up to have somebody else's kids raise my kids. Did you? Maybe you don't care. Maybe you don't have any kids. But what are some other ways it's happened? My Churchill said, when you're 20, you think that everybody's thinking about you. And you care what their opinion of you is. When you're 40, you don't care. You realize when you're 40 that they're not talking about you all the time. And when you're 60, you don't care whether they are or not. There's a very freeing thing about being over 60 or 60 is that you just don't have to care that much about what people think of you. The good book says, wisdom literature, the fear of man bringeth a snare. It's a trap, being afraid of what people think of you. We homeschooled our kids before we put them in charter schools that were good. And the headmaster of this homeschool group, he talked about peer pressure. He said, your kids would rather be wrong than different. And every day the kids have to make a choice. They're with them. They're with their gang, their peers. By God, they got to fit in. That's why we went into homeschooling. I don't want them raising my kids. Their parents are absentee. Why would I want them to do it? Kids would rather be wrong than different. We're going to pick it up next time with a couple of examples here that I think will be pretty convincing to you. So anyway, thank you for listening. This is the Jeremiah Gunn Show. And I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate you listening. Thank you. We're in this together. We got a country and a world to save. So thank you for listening. It means a lot. It's not really for me. It's for you. It's for us, the United States. Jeremiah Gunn Show, signing off. Thank you. Thank you.